Um,
Okay, I'm ready when you are.
okay, well, now we're going to try to write a sonnet.
Okay, just wait, let me do a countdown here so I don't have any problems with it. Let me just double check a pen here. Okay. 5, 4.
Okay, well, now we're going to try to write a sonnet here. We're in my den here. Whoops, there goes the pencil. If you can see here, this is sort of like the factory here. I've got poems here. If you pan over, that are the folded ones are ones that have come back rejected. The other ones are ones to go out. Up there are bigger poems. Here's my trusty typewriter, and here's my notebook where I do generally smaller poems, mostly sonnets and whatnot. And as you can see, there's a lot of scribbling there, crossing out and whatnot. The purpose of this exercise is I got the idea. There's a fellow I know in this salon group started by this fellow from this list of Twin Cities artists that I started. And one night at the salon, he showed a time-lapse photography of or film of him doing a nude sketch. I thought that'd be interesting to do a poetic equivalent of that. And so I'm going to try to do a sonnet. Since it's a small form, it has certain dicta that has to be followed. And so it's fairly easy. And also to show that you don't have to wait for divine inspiration. Now, there are several topics here. I haven't settled on a topic, but the other day I was thinking maybe doing a killer sonnet. I've got a series of sonnets on famous killers in history, international serial killers, gangsters, and such. And I was thinking of doing a local guy, or fairly local guy, Ed Gein, who was the inspiration for Psycho and also the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So basically what has to be done here, I think I'm going to go with that. I was thinking of doing maybe one on my childhood, or perhaps there's a paranormal incident about this Mattoon gasser, which was this person who apparently tried to gas people in their homes during World War II in this Mattoon, Illinois, or Ohio it was. But I think I'll stick with the Ed Gein one. I did a couple of more open and sunny and uplifting sonnets over the weekend, so I think we'll go for a killer. So the first thing to do is to get sort of, if we want to take a baking metaphor, is to try to get the ingredients. And so we have to look up for the historical elements. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and get my encyclopedia, or a couple of books on killers, and look up a few facts of Ed Gein's life. And I haven't planned this, so usually what you want to do is get an into a character, especially in a sonnet or a moment or something that stands out in their life, and that's the extrapolation that gets you into them. So let me get my my killer books here. As I said, Gein was supposedly the inspiration for the film Psycho. Now here's my crime encyclopedia. It's not really that good of a book. It's got a few interesting things here, but let me look up Gein here, see if he's even in this book. Let's see. Gein. Ed Gein. E-F-G. Ed Gein, 138 and 274. Let's see, 274. Okay, 274, he's only mentioned here, so 138 in passing. So let's see what they have to say. And what we'll do is what I'll do is try to get a handful of facts to establish the Gein persona, because while he may be well known, especially here in the Midwest, 200 years from now in Saudi Arabia, no one might know who the hell he is. So, and probably don't know now. Okay, G, 138. Edward Gein, 1906 to 1984. Well, so there's the first fact here. 1906 to 1984. And Ed Gein, we'll just use that as a working title to start with. A very strange American, crafted, oh, it's a waistcoat. Okay, so let's see. We know he was a cannibal, and he made a waistcoat and belt from human flesh. So that's interesting. From human flesh. So these are sort of like the ingredients I put on the side. Gein's idea and intent equally bizarre. You want to use them as containers. Okay, so he used So he used skulls as bowls. And I think also in the movie Silence of the Lambs, that Hopkins won for, the Buffalo Bill character there was based on Gein as well. So he's had quite a cultural influence, at least in the slasher films of the 80s and 90s. Slitting up side tandem, free Ginga, he found in life, most provided in his capacity as a butcher, worked in the woodshed, block and tackle. Let's see. I think you get the right idea. In real life, Gein was a precursor to Dahmer. For example, I did a Dahmer sonnet called Dahmer in the Summer of Love in 1968, set as a little fucked up boy. You're going to have to bleep that one. But anyway, oh yeah, and here Gein's influence, yeah, Little Cat, Buffalo Bill, The Skin Transvestite of Silence of the Lamb, Bret Easton Ellis's American Psycho, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Psycho. So yeah, so let's see, the Oedipal motives. Okay, that's always good, but that's overworked, but we can also use that as perhaps something looming in the background. The room had been nailed shut. Okay, so his mom died in 45. Mom died in 45. He never enjoyed anyone before she died. Ma Gein drummed into the sex and masturbation was worth. So, let's see, sex before marriage, which is fornication, and masturbation are sins. So in a lot of ways he's very classic here. So what we're getting here is something that's going to need to have some other element brought into it. Otherwise we're just going to get, you know, some kind of Oedipal fixation, and that's not really particularly interesting. Ma kept in touch after she passed on, so okay, so he's talking to her. He was impressed by Christine Jorgensen's sex change operation. That's interesting. Interested in sex change. In sex change. Household knickknacks, Gein's arrest, Ma Warden, two local girls vanished on the train, Gein's home was razed, House of Horror tourist attraction. So let's see, house became attraction afterwards. So let's see, so he was arrested in 57. So probably what we want to do is do something afterwards, because you know, I've done poems before on people actually killing and whatnot, and that's not necessarily the most interesting part of a killer. It's what goes into it, what comes after it. For example, I've done a pair of sonnets on Leopold and Loeb, the thrill killers from the 20s, and what was interesting about them wasn't the fact that they killed, really, but their homosexual relationship and how that played out. Let's see, Gein died on July 24th. Okay, arrested 57, died in 84. So that means he had 27 years to basically stew. Gein died as an ideal patient. So that's an interesting thing. He was an ideal patient and prisoner. So here's a guy who, when let loose in society to his own means, was a totally screwed up human being, but yet when put into the strictures of someone else's care, apparently was a good, solid human being. Ideal patient and prisoner. So that's something interesting that might be used here. And there was a fan club. The belly button. Okay, so that's some basic stuff, and so, probably a lot of that is recapitulated in these two other books. But let me just flip through here. EFG Gein. See if there's any other tidbits. Because what you'll want to do is always go for a couple of sources, because it's like getting a parallax, 2 or 3 perspectives. It lets you get depth perception rather than just flat. So here, Edward Gein. Ed Gein, America's most famous murderer. Well, this is a dated book, obviously. His crimes in front of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, so we're getting redundancy. Born 8/8/1906, so he was born 1906. August 8th. From childhood had been ambiguous about masculinity. Again, Christine Jorgensen, fascinated between 50 and 54. So he was also a grave robber. That's another famous fact. But again, that's something that's probably not going to be something that's interest in the bone here. The choice of bits was specifically preserved. December 54, killing, and really his victims, and it sounds cold, but his victims really aren't that important. The only poem that I think of a killer that I've done where the victim was, the focus of the poem was when I did a poem called De Salvo Unsolved about the Boston Strangler, and I did the poem based on the one black woman he killed, which was interesting because usually most of them, he started out with old women and then progressed to young white women, but there was one black woman that he killed, so that was the into the DeSalvo character. Let's see here. Deputy's skin decoration, skin. So basically, nothing in these books here that give me two fresh vaginas. Okay, so that's nothing in this particular book. Now here's the New Murderers Who, which is generally the best of the books that I've used. It's published in Britain, Great Britain. For example, here's a guy, just Paul John Knowles. They did a sonnet called Paul John Knowles, Murderer, Rapist, Prognosticator. He predicted his own death. He was a real psycho, too. But let's see here. AFGK. Let's see. Albert Fish. That's the one you didn't like, Dylan. There he is, the old guy who used to stick needles in his groin.
Go fish.
Go fish. Let's see, EFG. We're going back here. Okay. John Wayne Gacy I've done. Here's Gein, and there's a picture of Gein, just in case you didn't know. A little dinky kind of a man, you know. Nothing, but anyway. Let's see if there's any facts here. Middle-aged farmer, denied an interest, overbearing mother, worked at farm. So he's a farmer, an Oedipal farmer, tilling the earth, mother, female. There's something there, perhaps. His practice was a ghoulish and extreme. 51-year-old woman, 54, okay, man's perverted pastime. Grave robber, necrophile, cannibal. Film Psycho. His petition, okay. He sought a sanity hearing. Okay, now there's an interesting fact. 1974, he seeks a sanity hearing. So that's something that may be. So these are things, and I don't know how I'm going to use them. I probably won't use all of them. It's only 14 lines that I can do. But petition was turned down by Judge Golmar. So that's something here. Judge Golmar. Sanity hearing after spending 30 and a model inmate. So those are the basic facts. There really isn't that much to work from here because a lot of these ideas and themes have been recapitulated in other more interesting characters. This was basically a loner. So let me get this stuff out of the way. So now what you do is, since I got the basic facts of this guy's life, now we want to put them in some kind of order, something that's an in, and I still don't know what. This is why I've got a sheet of lines that are interesting. So I'm going to scan through some of these lines and maybe anywhere from 2 to 6 lines that might interest me. And I'm not necessarily looking for violent lines, since obviously anyone reading about Ed Gein and just the things that are going to appear are going to portray him as a violent, fiendish individual. So you want lines that are going to stick out, especially some that might stick out tangentially, or even something in total opposition that can bring something into focus. Because sometimes you have to be far away from something to get in order to understand conservatism, you have to be an extreme liberal. In other words, let's see here. So I'm gonna scan through here, see if I can get a few lines here. Evil must confuse to win. Now, that's a good line, but Gein was probably not smart enough. Pepper pot, perfection lives, twisted theory, nothing in that sheet. Well, here's an interesting line that I may use. Fidelity is ruin, because we know that Gein here, as what it says, is that he had a sort of slavishness to his mother's memory here. She died 12 years before he was caught, and that's something. And fidelity is a word that has multiple meanings. Well, no. Let's see here. Here's an interesting word, grabastic. It's not a particularly poetic word, but it's something that it sounds like bastard. It has sexual connotations. I might use that somewhere, just because I don't know if I'm going to take. I don't know physically what the poem is going to look like yet, but it's something here. Let's see. Okay. So that's that sheet. Let's see here. See, when I did the Dharma sonnet, I specifically showed how wacky he was as a kid. I don't want to go in that direction because I don't like to repeat myself. I'm still trying to find out the in to Gein here. Let's see here. I don't want to do the hunting. Let's see. Here's a line that I got here. Smile is a hint of the skull. Now we know he was doing something with skulls. He became a model prisoner. That's something that might tie together. So, smile is a hint of the skull. So these again, just like the facts of his life, these lines sort of provide a frame by which I can string the whatever I'm going to say about him. Let's see here. We don't need that one. Let's see here. I'm trying to look now, see if I can make any connections between his life and some of the lines here. House, ideal prisoner. I don't. My idea right now is not to do anything too graphic or violent because that would be too expected. Well, here's a phrase, a space and time, and that's from actually from a 10 years after album from the early 70s, 10 years after Alvin Lee. I've always liked that phrase, but this is something that might work in a poem like this because we know that there was basically nothing in his life after he got caught. He was a model prisoner, so there's an emptiness there. That's a line that might work somewhere. I don't know if I'm going to use it, but a space and time. Thank you, Alvin Lee. Let's see. Reason has its own identity of rainbows, from business to wasness, distractive. Distractive is an interesting word. Grabastic, distractive. They sound alike too. One of the things too is my mind generally likes alliteration and assonance, putting together words that sound alike or have time. And also words like grabastic, distractive, they're dissonant. They can be used even if I don't take a violent approach. They're words that in the mix are going to give a sense of that he's not quite there. It's the sound equivalent of maybe a facial tick or something, and that's what we want to sort of compose. That this is the photo. The guy looks ghoulish, but more than likely, when he was alive, people probably thought of him as an ideal neighbor, a quiet, weird little man that was pretty harmless. Slip under your skin, flesh. That might be too. That's a line that could be used in a sexual poem, and obviously in a poem like this. But I don't know if I want to go that. If I'm also looking for lines that might be totally not here, not anything to do with it, also my well, but let's see. Singing as my lips turn slow to stone is an interesting line, and it's a first line. But I don't know, but just the singing as his lips, I don't know whether I want to take the first person attack into him because I doubt he's that coherent. So I'm probably leaning towards having an omniscient speaker. Shape the odor of dreams. My hell is clarity. Don't want to get too explicit. Love chores, love tasks. You said you loved another man. Let's see. Oh boy, let's see. Well, here's a line that's a very Thomas Hardy-like line that might be interesting. A bough that for a moment sways or stays, that I've been looking to use. And that's something that would be a poem on memory, but it would be interesting to put that in here. Let me think how I might use that. Bough that for a moment sways. Let's say maybe if he's looking out his window, that might be something that could, well, yeah, that's something. A bough that for a moment sways and stays, because that would give me a way to start and end the poem slightly different. Let's see. A bough that for moment sways slash stays. So that's something, I think, that, and it's an innocent enough line that could have a nice jarring effect to start with innocence and end with some kind of innocence. And I don't know yet if I even want to descend into depravity. Maybe just doing a poem on Gein implies that. But then again, you have to worry or think about, 500 years from now in Outer Mongolia, is someone going to be interested in this? So you have to put a little bit something of his story in. That's always a concern in any historical poem. How historical are the figures? Obviously, someone like Lincoln is probably going to be known till the end of time, so you don't have to really do that. But if you're doing a poem on Madonna, 50 years from now, no one will probably care about her. Nothing against Madonna. Let's see here. So let's see. We've still got a couple of sheets to go here, and then we'll start trying to put them together here.
You wouldn't mind some things against Madonna.
Well, I know she's always kind of skanky. I prefer that little Jewel, the singer, the little blondie. She's got a book of poems out, terrible poems, but come to me, I will teach you. Let's see here. Here's a nice comic line that I'll probably use in a poem about my father. Which ball did I come from, the left or the right? It's an interesting question, but I doubt I can use it here. Inward breath of sex with trust and no love. So now I'm thinking if I'm gonna, my main thrust is now to have maybe Gein or put him in some kind of idyllic setting. I think the idea of having him in some hermetic, sealed off place is the way to go into this poem. And the contrast between a word like sways and stays, or maybe starting stays and ends with sways, is something that's the way to go here. Now again, if I were doing this poem tomorrow without the cameras and doing a poem on Gein, who knows what I'd come up with, but everything, the moment matters, I guess. Let's see. Lick your silver pussy. That's the line I'd like to use before. Tangle of mirrors. Mirrors is an overused metaphor in poetry, though. Beauty but a word. That would be an interesting line to use in a Gein poem. You render beauty but a word, or who renders beauty but a word, some variant on that. I don't, that would probably be pushing it, because again, if I were doing a poem on Ted Bundy, who was real smart, that would be a good, I think I could do that, but you have to consider the character of the person. Oh, let's see, I had no, okay, even your touch and feel. So I'm now looking for not only, but now I'm trying to look for quiet lines, lines maybe with some nature, Edenic kind of lines, because that's I think where I'm heading here. How to twist the love out of that. I've used variants of that line before, but I don't know if I want to imply, I doubt Gein even sickly understood love, and if I'm speaking from a third person, I don't know, once a woman's flesh and symphony, I use that line, gotta scratch that out. Art remains a hot pot, love bears its contradictions, last death on the last battlefield. Oh. Let's see, so let's put that there. Only you relate. Only it relates. A bough that for a moment sways, stays. Only it relates. Only it relates. Because we got the R's, relates, stays, sways, distractive, T's, grabastic. So let's try a variant on the line I've got here. Only it relates. That's because now I'm thinking that also sound-wise has a lot of the T's and S's and the A, the long A sounds too.